So it was quite an easy gig to arrange really, and I have been here today because we moved a Jaguar out of Cosford today that has gone, and I'll tell you where it's gone to the Gatwick Aviation Museum. So I've had a team here all this week moving a Jaguar which finally hit the road today, and I believe it has arrived at Gatwick this afternoon. So I've been in the Air Force 40 years, which in an organisation that's 106 years old means that I've been part of it for over a third of its existence, which I never thought I'd actually say that. And I go back a long way with Cosford, because after I trained at Swinderby, I did my 6 weeks at Swinderby. I did come here for 18 months. I don't know how well you know Cosford. 18 months living in an 18-man room in Fulton Block, as we did back then. So I wasn't strictly speaking an apprentice, I was what's called a direct entry technician, but it was just like an apprenticeship squashed into a smaller length of time. So there's a sort of potted career history for me. 1984, Swinderby, long gone. And I was at Swinderby just at the weekend because I was at a conference, and it has gone. Even the runway that we used to run up and down in our pumps has gone. Some career highlights: 3 years in Hong Kong. When I joined, some of the old boys used to talk about Aden and Singapore, and we all used to look at them and go, yeah, whatever, mate. And now I'm one of those old boys who talks about Hong Kong, and the youngsters look at me and go, really? Seriously? There's not many of us left in the Air Force now, frankly, who served there. It was amazing. What a place to be a young single man. It was just terrific, but we don't have postings like that really anymore. Came back from Hong Kong, 10 years at Lynham, flying all over the world, everywhere I went. They took 2 engineers, so I got the opportunity to do lots and lots of flying. Focuses the mind if you're servicing an aeroplane and fixing it that you're about to get on. So I particularly enjoyed that. 60 countries, some real wacky ones. I've been to the Congo, I've been to Antarctica. Routinely we used to go to Cyprus, America, Canada, all over. So terrific. I felt very privileged, to be honest. Probably couldn't do it forever, so I got picked up for commissioning, went to Cranwell. Not easy when you're 40 years old, carrying a pine pole for 24 weeks, but I did it. Since then, I was on the military programme. I did a BSc in Engineering Management through Lincoln University. I did my Chartered Engineer through the Aeros. I always wanted to be part of the Aeros. I thought they were the organisation that were for me. Not long after doing that, they rang me and said, you did really well on your C-Eng, would you like to become an examiner? So I said, yep, let's do that as well. And since then I've done a lot of freelance work for the Aeronautical Society, doing endpoint assessments on apprentices, and I've done freelance work for BA, Virgin, EasyJet, Rolls-Royce, Air Tanker. I can rattle them off, lots and lots of different airlines, which is quite a privilege as well. And then last year, because of the work I've done on Heritage, they picked me up to be a fellow, and I came off that board in June last year, so delighted about that. Just some places there, there's just some highlights. It's 100 Squadron Hawk, I've just got out of it. Maharik, bonus point for anyone who knows where Maharik is.
Bahrain.
Bahrain, correct, yeah, so that was just a trip to Bahrain that we did when I was on the flight safety team. Lots of travel. Some extraordinary places I've been to. I could fill a talk with that really. So I'm on the RAF Heritage team, which is a really nice job. It's a busy job, but it's a great job. I visit all the aircraft museums in the country. Tough, I know you're thinking that, but if I didn't do it, perhaps one of you'd do it, and that just wouldn't seem right. So I go around all the aircraft museums in the country. I carry out, sort of official visits to them because I can't shift an aeroplane to a museum I've not been to. So this is what I'll cover in my talk. You'll see the rotodome there and the stays that it's on. There's a set of those around in Darren's area now because I managed to save some. We couldn't save a full aircraft, they would be broken up. But Darren has those. So, heritage definition, what we do, RAF Heritage. I'm going to major a bit on retirement of Tornado because that really brings out focus of what we did and really illustrates our sort of core activity. Chinook Bravo November, which is now here. Gate Guardian, station squadron closures, a little bit about something called Op Panther, which I'll go into, which is a police operation. Loads of other stuff, some highlights from last year, questions at the end, but I'm not precious. If somebody wants to ask me a question throughout, you know, I really don't mind. So please do, you know, stick your hand up or ask me something if it's burning you, and we'll see how that goes. So there we go. Have a read of that. So that's a UNESCO definition, which we distill down into that. So what's the point? Okay, do we need to do that? So we break that down even more into this, and I like to call it identify, preserve, exploit. So the purpose of what we do is to try and inspire future generations. We don't just do it for the sake of it. It's all part of a wider engagement policy, and at the bottom there you'll see that it is a complement to other engagement strategies of the Air Force. We compete in the employment market with everybody else. So, you know, we want to try and get the best candidates through the door, and I think by placing aircraft around museums, we can do some of that inspiring work. It's certainly what inspired me. I was brought up 6 miles from Linton-on-Ouse, up in Yorkshire, and I used to cycle up to Linton-on-Ouse and watch the planes. Back in the day, in the Cold War, they visiting aircraft all day. It was absolutely amazing. Without being brought up there, perhaps I wouldn't do what I do now. I'm an aircraft fan, I'm an aviation fan. Even today, I always look up, I've got flight radar on my phone, you know, so you can turn your job, your hobby into your job. Perhaps they say you never work. I wish it felt like that sometimes, but there we are. So, identify, preserve, exploit. And in doing so, we deal with aircraft retirements, museums, silver artwork, medals, buildings of significant historical interest, station squadron closures. We have a lot of those, as I'm sure you know. Squadrons and formations standing up. Believe it or not, we do actually bring new capability in. Let's think F-35 with 617 Squadron. The Maritime Force, we had a gap in the Maritime Force for about 10 years after Nimrod retired. They've now stood up again. They wanted all their stuff back. That fell to me and my boss to try and find all that stuff which had been sort of distributed around the Air Force. We also deal with a lot of media inquiries, freedom of information inquiries, parliamentary questions, cabinet office questions. How many tornadoes have we still got? Why are they asking that? We wonder. Not that any of them will ever fly again, but they do ask, they mean well. But that's important. That last line that came across. It is not humanly possible or plausible to save everything. Even though I get phone calls saying, you've got to save that, I flew that aeroplane, you've got to save it. Yeah, but there's a dozen of them in museums already, mate. So we don't really need to save that one, but we might sell it. So, you know, we do have to think about not everything can be saved. You know, station closures are particularly emotional. Biggin Hill, let's think. Halton potentially coming up. Linton-on-Ouse, and I'll talk about that, not quite so emotional. But there are lots of people out in the community, retired people, current people who have a connection with RAF bases that we close. So we have to tread sensitively, and again I'll do some more of that later in the presentation. So here we go, retirement of Tornado GR4. People remember this, March 2019, there was a 3-ship of Tornadoes. They toured all over the country, burning fuel, and they must have had some left in or something. So this was a major fleet retirement program, the first time that both myself and my boss had dealt with something quite so big. So I'm not the fleet manager, I'm not the project team leader, I'm not the project team. They deal with the nuts and bolts of retiring them, but we wanted to try and save some to go into museums. So that's how it's promulgated. That's just a quick, you don't need to take all that in, but that is a defence, what we call a DIN, which talks about what happens notifying that we're going to retire Tornado. The entire fleet, we're going to stop flying them. And That's how it comes out in official form. So, at the time that Tornado retired, they weren't going to sell any. None were going to be sold. That's not possible. And that was what we were told. And the initial direction that we were given, that none were to be gifted. Every single one of them was to be put in the skip. And I remember this conversation. So my boss and a number of people from the Tornado community went to Whitehall, had a meeting with the then ACAS, to say we'd like to save some Tornadoes, we'd really like to give them to museums, think of the role they've played, the distinguished service that Tornadoes have had, particularly the GRs, we need to save some. The then ACAS said, no, not interested, they're all going in the skip. And that's it. And I remember that phone call, my boss, she came out, she phoned me from a cafe in Whitehall and said, Ricky said, no, we can't save any. You know, wrong answer. So we were quite disappointed about that. We just felt that that was not really doing the right thing. But like the good servicemen and women that we are, we thought he won't be in post forever, will he? So, I tell you what, we will plan to try and save some regardless, and we'll just plan because we've got time on our side. So we went well ahead of the March 2019 retirement date. So we shortlisted some potential museums. We did have 63 expressions of interest in Tornado, ranging from pub car parks to from gardens, I kid you not, motorway service stations, or, you know, but we could only really consider serious applications, clearly. Time came, that ACAS moved on, new ACAS comes into post, Tornado pilot. Let's convene that same meeting. So they all went up to Whitehall again and said, your predecessor said, put them all in the skip. We went, no, stop. Save as many as you can. He almost welled up, apparently. So I won't name names, but I mean, Darren can probably work out who these various personalities are. But, so that's fantastic. So we can save them, but oh dear, the policy said we cannot gift to private museums. Now this was in Joint Service Publication 462, which is one of my Bibles, JSP 462. No gifting to private museums, you can only gift to state-funded museums. So we thought, well, this is a bit ridiculous as well. Why, you know, the alternative is to scrap them. You know, where's the benefit in that? We actually have to pay to scrap them. Or could we put them in regional museums where we could make a real connection with hard-to-reach audiences, with, you know, targeting STEM, cadets, school visits, trying and said, surely that's better value for money for defence than scrapping them. So we challenged that policy, and in fact we met very little opposition, we just sort of rewrote it and told them this is what we're going to do. So there we had all these Tornadoes. There weren't that many flying when it retired. Did I put there? Yes, so only 12 left flying from a fleet of about 160 odd that we had at one time of GRs. By March 2019, the others had all been broken down for spares or been scrapped already. So we only had 12 to play with. Government to government sale, that trumps everything. That trumps all my business, but we were not going to sell Tornadoes. Now, there was a small challenge because it's still operated by coalition nations. So the Germans, the Italians and the Saudis still fly Tornadoes. So we have to tread slightly carefully from a classified equipment perspective and from the perspective of their operational capability. The other thing that trumps what I do is training aircraft. So here, Cosford, we are at the Defence School of Aeronautical Engineering. They use Tornadoes to train future technicians. Which, so it always irks me slightly when I read, you know, that the Air Force no longer uses Tornadoes, you know, they got rid of them, that's a wish. Well, that's not true, we no longer fly them. But the Tornadoes that are here, being used by DSAE, you know, have a long, long life ahead of them, teaching our future technicians. But that left about 5 or 6 for us to give to museums, and I say about because some others actually appeared at the same time, and I'll say that. So when I look at a museum, and I did this weekend, so I was at Newark this weekend, these are the sorts of things we look at. Before I consider gifting an aircraft, I need to reassure myself on all of these aspects. I can't have a museum telling a bad story using my aeroplane as a prop. They've got to tell the right story. Of course, the established museums do, but we still have to make sure of that. Footfall turnover business plan. We need to see that they've got a continuity plan, that they've got longevity in the site they're on, or else if they suddenly close down, and if you ears to the ground, you'll know that quite a well-established museum did recently close down. It does give us a problem. We have to go back sometimes and get those aircraft. People say to us, what are we going to do with them? So regional distribution, there's a government policy called levelling up, I'm sure you're well aware of it. So unofficially we will look at Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, because that to me, I'm a simple bloke, is a levelling up policy. Let's put them regionally. There's quite a few in England already. Community engagement recruitment, I want to see that they actually do use these, that they do get cadets in, they do get university students in to use these aircraft as props. So STEM, there we go. This is another challenge I face when I go to a museum. So I won't say where that is, some of you may recognise it, but that's a museum on the left there. That was at last summer. And I stood there with the museum director and we looked at that and I went, so what am I thinking when I look at that aeroplane before I give you one? Yeah, Rick, so yeah, well we have got a rolling programme of doing them up. So, I don't want an aircraft to look like that. I want them to look like that, which is one I just gave. Well, I'll point you on there. I want them to look like that. So, and that is one we gifted last summer. That was June last year. This was about July last year. So my boss has decreed, and I support it as well, that before we gift an aircraft now, it's got to go indoors. If you haven't got anywhere indoors to put it, you can't have one, because we don't want them to end up looking like that. Some of the other aircraft at this museum, I've got to say, were lovely. I've chosen the worst example there. But even so, I don't want my Tornado to start looking like that in 4 or 5 years' time. That's not giving out the right messages, is it? So, here we are. These are the airframes. I've itemised the airframes now. So, Cosford, quite a few came here. I say quite a few, 2 or 3. We sent one to Morton in Marsh for fire training, which is the new co-located civilian and defence fire school. We don't set fire to them anymore because we're not allowed, because it sends all the nasties into the atmosphere. So they use aircraft to drag out crew, to practice drag outs from the cockpit. When it comes to firefighting, they put canisters in, incendiary canisters inside that create the illusion of them being on fire, and they practice their firefighting skills doing that. Some went to Honington, which is the RAF Regiment depot. They've set up sort of a dummy flight line there, and then they leopard crawl around them and do what the regiment do, to practice, to give them sort of a more realistic scenario. However, that's come back to bite us a little bit now, because they don't actually want them anymore. So and that's come back now as a problem for me to try and sort those GR4s out there. They are very scruffy. They've been sat outside, and unbelievably the regiment have gone, we haven't got anyone who can really look after them. Well, we kind of did tell you that, but we weren't so switched on at the time of retirement. So here's some others. First one out the door was ZA469 to Duxford. Looking lovely. I'll show you a picture of that in a minute. Ulster Aviation Society, terrific establishment at Long Kesh, right by where the H blocks used to be. I don't know whether any of you know it. Really splendid museum, very well established engineering setup. There used to be 28 RAF bases in Northern Ireland. There are now none. Before somebody puts their hand up and says, what about Aldergrove? It's not an RAF base anymore, it is still a flying station, but that's all it is. South Wales, at St Athan, another terrific museum, and I'll tell you the story of how they got ZA612, because that was a bit of a mess to start with, but we sorted that out. Montrose Air Station, another lovely museum. Montrose, the first RAF base ever, sort of predates, well, it was 2018 when it started. And Bull Creek, Australia. So why Australia? Okay, why Australia? It's a terrific museum. Previous CAS was quite an Australiophile, if that's a word. They are our coalition partners. At that time, the Indo-Pacific region was seen as the next flashpoint, and they have they have a Lancaster. They tell the story of Bomber Command, and so it was considered, and they paid all the expenses and all the TNS and everybody of the teams that went out there. So it was decided they could have a Tornado as well. You know, they're our coalition partners. It was good defence diplomacy. So there we go, ZA469 Duxford, if any of you've been. One of the museum challenges, and you can see that there, is that they like to swing the wings for space. And if you swing the wings on a Tornado and it's got the engines fitted, they become very tail heavy. And I did a survey with Darren actually on their one at Hendon, and the C of G is about 8 inches in front of the main wheels. So if somebody walked along the spine, it would tip. So we have to be very careful. So now I mandate, before we send them out, they have to put 300 kilograms of ballast in the nose. If possible, don't swing the wings. And if possible, obviously leave the seats in, and if possible, you know, don't have engines in. But we've gone back on that one now because they don't look very good with engines not fitted. And I'll show you a picture of that as well. So that just sort of recovers what I've said. We look at all those aspects. What squadron's that?
41.
41. Bonus point. Well done. Who said that? Yeah.
Squadron.
Fast Jet Test Squadron now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, have been for a long time, but yeah, that's 41 Squadron. It's just an unusual squadron, so that's why I asked. So around the same time that all the Tornadoes came up for retirement, there was some other activity going on which involved Tornadoes. So Manston, now a refugee camp, was the old fire school. There were tons of old airframes at Manston. What a place. It was quite remarkable, really. Some better than others. So we went down there and spent a couple of days down there and sort of surveyed them all. Most of them were only fit for being sold, but there was one particular that took our fancy, which is ZE204, which was an F3 Tornado. There wasn't much in it. It was like an F3 shaped box of fresh air, really. It'd been sat on the grass for 10 years, undercarriage folded, but Nelsam, which is a museum up in Sunderland, North East Land, Sea and Air Museum, to which I'd done an assurance visit, were considered worthy recipients of that. It had a 25 Squadron badge on the tail. They used to be based at Leeming, so North East. So we elected to gift that to Nelsam. We were able to use service resources to move that because we had to clear Manston. We cleared the whole of the Manston site in 6 weeks. It was quite an effort. Yeah, it was quite a challenge. Bicester ZA319, that was the first production Tornado. It had been a gate guardian at Bicester, at the MOD site at Bicester for 20 years. It only got saved because there was a colonel or a brigadier, some high-ranking army officer who was in charge of the Bicester site. He said, I don't want that here, get rid. And they tried to get rid, we knew nothing about it, it wasn't on my books, it wasn't on the military register. And they tried to get rid of it from Bicester, and they tried to lift it over the road. The Thames Valley Police said, you can't do that, so they put it back. And the local MP kicked off about it, and it was all over the press, and we went, how come we don't know about this? So I got in touch with Bicester, and I said, I'll find a home for that Tornado for you, and we'll do it properly. And they went, okay, over to you. So I project managed getting this tornado out of Bicester, and I'll show you some pictures of how we did that. We did have to close the road, but we got Thames Valley Police on side. Quite spectacular, always draws a bit of a crowd. But yeah, so both destinations were chosen because of local connection. So ZA319 flew predominantly from Boscombe, it was a trials aircraft. And I say 204 had a 25 Squadron badge on the tail, and they were based at Leeming when they stood down. So this is ZA612 going to South Wales Aviation Museum, June 2021. So kind of amid lockdowns and all sorts, this was an interesting challenge. This one went these pictures are taken at Porton Down in Wiltshire. So Porton Down is they don't want to call it that, but it is a chemical weapons establishment. Okay, that's the National Chemical Weapons Establishment. When Tornado retired, we weren't quite so switched on. They asked for one. They went straight to the fleet managers and they asked for one. They said, could we have one to train our apprentices, please? We want to make them air aware. And the fleet managers let one go to Porton Down. About 6 months later, I get a phone call in the office and they said, when we said apprentices, we haven't really got any apprentices and we don't really know what to do with it. Could we have it as a gate guard, please? To which I thought, you're not really entitled to an aircraft at a chemical weapons establishment. That really is not sending out. You know, the Geneva Convention says you can't dispense chemical weapons from an airborne platform. So collectively, it wasn't just me, we went, absolutely not, you cannot have it as a gate guardian. In fact, we're slightly annoyed that you got it in the first place because you pulled the wool over our eyes, rather. So I thought I'm going to find a new home for this, a really good one, engines fitted, and we haven't got one, South Wales. Now South Wales, there is an aircraft engineering company, GJD Engineering, who were here moving the Jag today. They said, if you gift us that aircraft, we'll come and get it and it'll cost you nothing. I was like, sounds good to me, guys, let's go with that plan. I was a bit worried, I'll be honest with you. I thought, oh my God, a bunch of gash civvies coming down, taking the Tornado apart, what they're going to be like. They were amazing. They are uber professional, I can tell you that, and Darren will underscore that because they move lots of Darren's aeroplanes. They are very, very professional. I did go down there because there might have been some politics. We had all sorts of potential problems and snags, and Porton Down said, oh, you've got to move the week because we've got to put a one-way system in place and it's really not convenient for us. And I said, I'm sorry, the road clearances are booked, the haulie is booked, transfer of title's booked, we're coming, sort it. And they did. So that's now splendidly on display at St Athan. This is the Leeming jet that was at Manston. So you can see no undercarriage. We got it down in the end, but we had to blow it down. It was very challenging. There's not much to it. But one man's old broken aeroplane is another man's restoration project. So museums actually do love, believe it or not, well, I shouldn't say that in this audience, but they do love restoring old airplanes. So they don't mind getting one that's a bit rubbish like that. We did find them some boxes to fit and so on. So another beautiful day, June 21 down at Manston. Here's the Bicester one going. We worried about this. We thought we wouldn't get the wings off because we thought they'd be corroded on, but they came off in the end. It was not too much of a problem. They're only held on by one bolt, Tornado wings. They swing. It's a massive bolt. It's like a sort of size of a bucket you would use to clean the car. And they go up from underneath. They're generally nitrogen fitted. So literally you shrink them down, they put them in, and then they expand, and that's all that holds them in. So it's quite. So when we take a Tornado apart now, we grind the wing pins down to make them in kit form. And I do tell the MPs who ask me how many have we got that particular story, I'm sorry, they'll never fly again because we've structurally modified them. So yeah, drew a bit of a crowd. You can see us lifting it over we had to lift it over some trees, over the road. It was in poor condition, but that's what it looks like now. And I've been down to see it. Boscombe Down, another great aircraft collection if ever you get the chance. It's at Old Sarum actually, it's just down the road from Boscombe Down. So it's no longer actually at the MOD site, it's about 4 miles away, something like that. So we don't do this in isolation, all of the work we do. I use lots and lots of different agencies that I can call upon to do my work depending on where they're going and what we're clearing and how it works. So first one, platform delivery teams, support authority. They've had loads of different names over the years, but this is they used to be at Whitton, they're now at Abbey Wood. So all our fleets have a fleet management function and a supply chain management function. So I liaise heavily with those teams to create the availability of airframes. I can't create that availability, I have to have one declared to me. So I work with them, and at the moment I work particularly with the Hawk fleet manager. I've got him on speed dial, I talk to him almost every day. I spoke to him today about, we're trying to get some Hawks out to museums, but it's a bit of a drip feed with Hawks. DESA, these are the people everyone loves to hate. This is the Defence Equipment Sales Authority. They sell everything from rowing machines to cabinets to sofas to aeroplanes, to individuals and also to governments. So I speak to them regularly, you know, because they have a claim on, in fact I spoke to them today again about Tucanos, that I'm trying to get some from museums, but they've sold most of them, but we're working through it. So corporate governance, Air Command, these are the accountants, these are the people who control purse strings in Air Command. So every time I gift an aeroplane, I have to get the financial value written off. And they're normally happy to do that because we would have to pay to scrap an aircraft, but they see the benefit too in gifting them to museums and the engagement piece there. We have an open channel with corporate governance. Fortunately, we do get on really well with them and they're quite happy. So DESA will value an aircraft for us, and then I put that on the forms that I fill in, and I send it to corporate governance and I get them to write down the value. The final say-so is mine, I'm the final signatory, but I have to compile all these other aspects. So you might not necessarily understand what that means, legacy subject matter expertise. So Tornadoes retired 2019, and with it went a lot of the people who worked on them. They decided to retire too. So I can struggle sometimes to find people that know the front of a Tornado from the back of a Tornado. And that can be a challenge, but I do fortunately have a number of SMEs at the moment that I can draw upon, subject matter experts, that I can draw upon. And we do it properly, so I do it through the chain of command of those people, so I don't get them to do it on the back of a fag packet, I don't get them to do it in their spare time. They do have day jobs, of course. A lot of my subject matter experts, my legacy experts, are based here at Cosford, and they're instructors at Cosford because they still work Tornadoes, Jaguars, Hawks, and they're the only people in the Air Force that now do. So I use the teams here very, very regularly. You know, on the flip side, I get them some nice trips, you know, all expenses paid, they get to go around the country doing this work, and it's all done properly through their chain of command. Can you see okay over there? I'm not in your way.
Yeah.
Cool. And hugely, I use these guys. Jarts used to be Crash and Smash. They've had loads of names over the years. They are brilliant. So when it's a service move, I use them, and I try and book them a long time in advance. But that can be a challenge sometimes because we'll have a week booked to do an aircraft move, and then somebody flies a Cessna into a hillside, and I lose Jarts. Okay, because they go and recover that Cessna. And the best plans that I had go by the wayside and we have to wait for them again. They are heavily tasked. I'll show you some of the stuff they do. Here's a picture of Jarts in action. That's a Hunter at Waddington. How many airmen does it take to remove a fuel tank? Quite a few, by the looks of that, all scratching their heads and sitting on it, and we got it off eventually. So Jarts, this is what they do. This is a slide from a Jarts presentation, which I'll let you read. So I'll have a sip of water. So the two acronyms at the top there, Post-Crash Management, Rapid Runway Clearance. They are the only agency in the country that does that. They are on a national standby for the government to perform that role, military and civilian. As you can see, for crash team and overseas, and RAF aircraft overseas. The F-35 that went in the sea out in South China, that was Jarts who recovered that. And there is no other team that has their range of capabilities. Now the chief planner with Jarts, Warrant Officer Davis, fortunately Keith and I were corporals together way back in the day on Hercs, so I do have a good relationship with JARTS. They will do stuff for us. Yeah, they're brilliant, you know, and they do the whole survey, they do the moves, they do the road clearances. They're a fantastic bunch. So this is JARTS in action. Who knows where that is? Cornwall. Yes, it's Cornwall. Yeah, well done, that is Cornwall. Everybody gets that. So that's obviously a BAC 111 in Cornwall, which is no longer there. Cornwall is that museum that sadly has closed. It was a terrific museum. I'm personally quite sad it closed. We can debate the reasons why it did, but we used to use, or JARTS used to use, Cornwall as a training area. As you can see here, perfect. So they're what it's called airbagging, that BAC 111 to pretend if it's bogged into, if it's come off the runway, if it's done a runway departure and it's bogged down, so you airbag it to get it clear. That BAC 111 was privately owned. It was owned by Gary Spores, GJD, and it's been chopped up now, and you will have seen it on the news. It's gone to a museum. I can't remember where it's gone, but it wasn't one of mine. But the cockpit now has gone to a museum. Yeah, very sad that Cornwall's closed. It has presented us with some challenges because we don't have a training area now. These are some of the challenges we face, and if you've been here this morning, you would have seen us loading a Jaguar, and these are the things we have to try and do. You have to take the wings off pretty much every aircraft to move it. I can't think of one where we don't take the wings off. That is easier on some platforms than others. Yeah, road moves, weight and road clearances. Lots of planes, you'd be amazed how many plane spotters that drive up and down the motorways of Britain and want to constantly take photographs, tweet on social media about aircraft moving around, which is good, which is a good thing really. I've not looked today, but I reckon within about 40 minutes of that Jaguar leaving here, there was probably something on social media. Look what I saw on the M6. That's good publicity for the museums. Sometimes we black out the tail numbers if we don't really want them to know, but other times, you know, it is good publicity in advance. So you'll see up there classified ITAR equipment. People know what ITAR means? Quite a challenge for us. So International Transport in Arms Regulations. It is a US State Department piece of legislation, which means if we put American kit in your aeroplane, you can't then pass it on to someone else. It's not allowed. So we've had to find ways around that because all of our aircraft are full of American kit. So the ways around it are we try and remove quite a lot, which we remove the big ticket items. So from Tornado we remove the radar, we take away the RHWR heads. But you know, it's even down to little pins in plugs are ITAR. So we have to craft something called a technology control plan, which satisfies the State Department. So essentially we say it's going to be behind a fence, it's going to be panelled up, we're not going to invite foreign embassies who are hostile to our interests, and that generally satisfies them. Well, it has to satisfy them, and that's done through an organisation at Abbey Wood that liaises with the State Department, and they get those approvals through. So as long as we go through those protective measures, they're happy for us to put them in museums. But it is a challenge, it's a lecture in its own right. Dwindling expertise, I mentioned that before, the legacy expertise. Yeah, public interest, people hanging off motorway bridges knowing that it's going to happen. Gatwick did not announce that the Jaguar was arriving today because they didn't want crowds of people around their very small entrance to their museum, getting in the way. And I talked about it earlier as well. The Tornadoes don't look very good without engines fitted, and I'll show you some pictures of that in a moment. So we were challenged by the then Chief of the Air Staff, who was a Tornado pilot, that if possible, could we find some engines, even for the private museum ones, because they just don't look great without engines. Modern aircraft design is economic and effective, so engines form part of the structure. So they're no longer just extraneous, they actually form part of the structure of the aircraft. And C of G considerations, and I always look at Darren because I remember Darren and I with a tape measure running around the Tornado at Hendon, you know, trying to work out where the C of G was, all the charts out and stuff, which we did in the end. So there's some Tornadoes, one with engines fitted and one without. The astute amongst you will notice, of course, that that is an F3, and that's a GR. Anybody want to guess where those are? I like testing models. Anyone? No? So that's Buccaneer there. Oh no, is it? No, it's Buccaneer, isn't it? So that's Yorkshire Air Museum at Elvington. And that's on the gate at Coningsby. So that's one of the 2 gate guardians at the main gate at Coningsby. So I managed to find some engines, so there was loads of them waiting to go for scrap in the engine bay at Marham. So I did manage to secure some engines. So we ran a programme of retrospectively fitting engines. And here we are, this is at Montrose. Now these are all Cosford guys. These are all Cosford instructors who are there. We don't plumb the engines, we just hang them. So you can see that work taking place inside at Montrose. Super little museum, do go if you're ever near there. Some of you may recognise Steve Brown on the top there, one officer here in the training unit. And there we are. Happy team, engines fitted. Don't they look better, don't you think, with the engines fitted? Makes quite a big difference, I think. Now, often when I do these talks, we have a break. So I've left that slide in, but what we can turn it into questions, if any, before I go on to sort of part 2 of my presentation. If anybody's got any questions at this stage. No?
Many F3s though?
No. No, there was that one at Manston. They were all scrapped.
Why?
They were all scrapped like sort of 10 because Typhoon took over, didn't it? So, and it's interesting because there was quite a furore when the GRs were scrapped, you know, all these people wanting them, or it's village, blah, blah, blah. Nobody really noticed when F3s were scrapped and stopped flying. They just disappeared off. Most of them were broken down for spares. There's common spares between them and the GR. They went to Leeming onto what we call a reduced to produce program, RTP. And so no, so we found that one at Manston. I don't think there's a lovely one at Hendon that Darren owns, but there really
that
are.
will be here in 3 years.
Yeah, but that is coming here. And we had a meeting about that today. But no, F3s are, well, very few and far between really, sadly. But there we are. So I will go on to what I consider sort of part 2 really of the presentation, which is this. This is here now. ZA718. Has everyone seen this here? ZA718. So Bravo November, really famous aeroplane, probably the most famous we had in the fleet. 4 DFCs and flown by most famous sort of pilot of it was this guy here, Ian Fortune. Got shot in the head in Afghanistan, smashed his helmet to pieces, survived. Now a wing commander. Served all over, really. Yeah, quite a story. So when this came up for retirement, there was a bit of a bidding war. And Darren will smile at this as well. There was a bit of a bidding war between the Imperial War Museum at Duxford and the RAF Museum, headquartered at Hendon. And I've never been so schmoozed by 2 state museums as when this was the case, because Duxford desperately wanted it as well. And so we decided, in a cowardly way that we did, that our 2-star officer should decide. So we staffed a case, laying out the evidence to him, the then ACAS, Simon Edward Spoon's ex-air pilot, who I've known for years. And he came down on the side of the RAF Museum, which I think is right and proper. That was our preference as well. But we had to promise Duxford Imperial War Museum that they'd get another one, which we did. Haven't got it yet, because it's suddenly started flying again, the one we were promised. So yeah, So that's all slightly uncomfortable, but we haven't heard from them for a while. But this is a story of Bravo November. I know quite a lot of you here are old enough to remember the Falklands War, because I do, so I know quite a lot of you do. And it was on Hermes, which you'll remember, not on Hermes, on the Atlantic conveyor, which got sunk on its way down to the Falklands. And a whole host of brand new Chinooks went down on that Atlantic conveyor, brand new, 0 hours. But 718 was airborne on an air test. So it managed to divert to Hermes, which is quite a story really, and then it only just recently retired, so it flew on from that point. Very famous pilot during the Falklands War, Dick Langworthy, no longer with us. But yeah, and it's earned 4 DFCs. That's quite unusual, right? For one aircraft to have earned 4 DFCs. Quite a thing. So there you go, that's reiterating what I just said about the huge interest from both museums. But the challenges are we still fly. Oh, question.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay?
Yeah, it's a wonderful aircraft.
Yep.
With a fantastic history.
Yep.
The only problem is, it's been gutted on the inside.
It has, and I'm just going to tell you that. You see, if you look at my thing there, challenge, preserving its look. So we still fly Chinooks. And a lot of the components between all the different marks are common. So as soon as one retires, the fleet management and the supply chain management people just want to strip it bare to keep the current fleet flying. So that is a real challenge, and we will try and get more bits of kit for it. But I am only a small voice, and I don't chop operations. If they need to deliver capability with the remaining Chinook fleet, then they're going to take stuff off it. All the blades on it are LifeX blades, so they're not airworthy anymore, they've run out of hours. But yeah, there you go, spares harvesting. A great challenge. So I think there's pictures, isn't there, Darren, now? Have you put photographic boards of the LRUs and stuff? But yeah, the solution is, you've just got to be patient. You know, and I can't go demanding spares fit to a museum piece when they're trying to deliver capability in Mali and all the other places that they fly that you see on the news. So,
am I right in saying that it was being converted to a Mark 6?
Yes, it was on a mod programme.
Yeah, and it was suddenly realised that the airframe time was virtually expired. So it was completely stripped out again.
Yeah, yeah. So they announced that they were culling certain marks of Chinook. So then they needed to look for candidates that had high flying hours or not much life left. That was on a mod programme, and it was considered for financial reasons that it was not worth completing it, and that would be a candidate for being pulled. So that's how we got it. That's how it became available. So obviously we're not going to scrap that one, are we? So, and there's the RAF Museum press release about it from here. And there it is. But yeah, I'm aware it's got lots of internal equipment missing, which is unusual because I like to, when we put an aircraft in a museum, we do like it to look like the aircraft. But this was so famous, we couldn't not take it just because it was going to have kit missing. Let's get it in and the ownership with the RAF Museum, and then we'll try and rebuild it in time. But I don't know when that will be. But yeah, it's unusual in that respect. But at least it's here. That the main. But it is a bit like Trigger's broom from Only Fools and Horses, because everything's been replaced so much on these airplanes. There's probably nothing left of the original airframe anyway, from 40 years ago. So here's something else we do. There's something else I do. Oops, too much. Gate guardians. Drive around the country, past RAF stations, you'll see gate guardians on the gate. They are to inspire the internal audience and to engage the external audience. But I put it to you that if one looks scruffy or not well looked after, it has the exact opposite effect. And such was the case with this next example I'm going to show you, which is the Victor that was at Marham. Now, we thought long and hard about what we did with that Victor at Mar. I mean, it was scruffy, it was falling apart, it needed lots of TLC. The then station commander wanted rid of it, and he wanted a better Gate Guardian. So we offered to give it away. You may have seen this, this was quite a big media campaign. It was free, but you've got to come and move it. There weren't really any serious bidders. It would be north of 100k to move something that size privately. You know, it was a massive, massive beast. 3-month period of the offer being out there. No serious bids came in for it. So it was converted into a JARTS training exercise, but there it is. I mean, it's a shame, grand old beast, but there are plenty of museums. So there's one here, there's one just above our heads, here somewhere. There's one at Duxford that they've restored. There's one at Elvington, Yorkshire, where they run the engines. So we're not short of Victors. If it had been the only one, we would have come up with a different plan. But we did need to do something with that. Go on.
Sorry, Gate Guardians, your ex-liner. The Britannia there,
Yes.
one of many. What
Yeah.
happened to that?
The Britannia. Do you mean the Comet? The Comet XL.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, it's a Boscombe, the cockpit section of Boscombe Down Aviation. XL 609 or something, wasn't it? Yeah, Sagittarius.
Yes.
I was at Liner for 10 years, so yeah, I'm very
I was
familiar
there
with
a
it.
couple of years, so...
Yeah. Yeah, it couldn't be saved, but they've saved the cockpit section. That is at Boscombe Down at Old Sarum. Splendid, they look after it, you know, they can still put some power on the instruments. But it's difficult saving big aeroplanes, it really is. If you leave them outside, they just rot away anyway, don't they? You know, somebody once said to me, oh, we need to preserve it on the gate, and I said, you know, we don't preserve them on gates, we put them on gates for about 20 years and they fall apart. You know, it's a perpetual challenge if an aeroplane's outside. Darren and I had this conversation tonight, that, you know, if you put an aircraft outside and it's not flying, you know, you're not keeping the systems wet, you're not air conditioning them, you're not pressurising them, things all just start to go mouldy and rusty, and it doesn't like it. You know, by flying aircraft, obviously you wear out other components, but by flying them, you keep the essential structure intact. So yeah, it was a shame. So JARTS went there, big training exercise for all their young lads, they bandsawed it up, sad, but necessary, unfortunately. And in its place now is a Tornado, which looks lovely, really nicely restored Tornado. So this is another project I was involved in. This is Aldergrove. The Wessex that was on the gate, really scruffy. And the Brigadier Colonel, whoever is in charge of the unit, he came out with the edict again, said I don't want that on my unit, get rid. So we found a museum in Northern Ireland for that. These are all pictures I've taken. You know, I went out there to do the survey, I'm dispatched to go and have a look at it, you know, what do you think? So, there we go. Off it went. So it's gone to the Crumlin Road Jail Museum to the Troubles. But it would have been scrapped otherwise. So, yeah. Interesting, Aldergrove, you know, used to be a really busy station, you know, lots of flying, thousands of personnel, it's just a bit deserted now. The Army Air Corps are there, and there's some RAF elements there, but not on the scale it used to be. So anyone know Wood Vale?
Yeah.
On the Formby bypass? Very prominent position. This Gate Guardian was right by the dual carriageway. I was at Wood Vale on other business, and I looked at that and went, oh dear, that's not really sending out the right messages. So when I came back, I wrote to the station commander there and said, that's not good, that Gate Guardian is, I need to do something with that. To which he tasked one of his men to go and to do some restoration activity on it, but they found they just couldn't really, it was beyond help, to be honest. So they called me, he held up the white flag and said, I don't think we can do anything with this really, it's rubbish, can you get us another one? And I said, yeah, I'll get you another one, thanks for being honest, we'll dispose of that one for you and we'll get you another one. So I got them that, which looks much nicer, doesn't it? So the Jet Promise was sold privately, the contractor came and moved that in a week. Every time I look at this, I'm troubled by the fact there's a panel moving there, missing there. So I don't know whether they've refitted that panel, to be honest. I'm hoping they might have done.
They had phantoms there before that, didn't they? Gave
At Woodvale? Oh, that's before my time, really. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Oh gosh, yeah, I can't remember any of them. So here's another nice one. St Morgan. This was an easy win. This is a project I ran. This was already at St Morgan, this Sea King helicopter. Anyone know what was there before that?
The Shackleton.
Yes, the Shackleton, yeah. Sold privately, still at St Morgan, went across the other side, not to the museum, but to a private owner, in kit form, and is still there, I understand, in kit form, because he doesn't know what to do with it, because he's bought it and he can't afford to do anything with it, which is what people do, you know. Anyway, that looks much nicer now. You can see they had to build some new plinths there. Those were the old Shackleton wheel stands there. But yeah, that's in lovely condition, as it should be, because it's new, or it's newly on the gate. Another one not too far from here, Sealand. I don't know if anyone's seen that. That was one of the first ones out the door. Lovely condition. But I was up at Sealand last year. They're telling me that they're going to change their entrance gate. So they need to move the tornado. Oh, God. So, you know, it's only going to move 100 yards, but it might as well be 100 miles if you've got to move it. So, and there's what you can't see in this picture, just sort of where I'm standing, is a hut in the middle of the road. So we can't even tow it down the road. But that's all gone very quiet. I suspect Sealand have run out of money for their new entrance project. That's usually why things go quiet. I've not heard anything from them at all. I went up there, we went through some plans, told them what they need to do, how we're going to do it, where do you want it, and it's just gone quiet. So I think they've gone, oh, we can't afford to do a new entrance. There's nothing really wrong with their old entrance. I'm not quite sure why they need to do it, but we'll wait and see. That'll teach me. My phone will go tomorrow and I'll say, oh, we need to do that. That, you know, I'd get Jarts to move that because it's a service move. You know, it's still an MOD establishment. So moving away from aircraft slightly, I was brought up near Linton-on-Ouse. I'm a Yorkshireman, and this was my local station. I supported them on their closure. Operationally, the risk of speaking out of turn, I think it was a really silly thing to do because the skies over Yorkshire are clear, the weather's generally nice, great for learner pilots. They've moved them all to Valley, where the weather's rubbish, and there's mixed traffic in the circuit, and it's, you know, they've got new aircraft, which we all read about, don't work very well. We could spend all day on that, but anyway, you know, we just do as we're told, so I had to support them for their closure. Station closures are very emotional. They have a big connection with the local community. They have a huge connection with York. All their aircraft had the Yorkshire badge on the side. There was memorials on station. No listed buildings, fortunately. They had 2 gate guardians, a host of silver, a host of artwork, badges, freedom scrolls. No list. I mentioned listed buildings because that is quite often a problem. Bolton, for instance, lots of them there. So, yeah, it's got and massive media interest. Everybody wants to know what's going to happen to that station. Now they make these big banner headline announcements. We're going to sell Linton-on-Ouse, and of course the council will come in and build houses, except they don't want to. So neither North Yorkshire or Rydale Council are in the least bit interested in taking over Linton-on-Ouse. So now we are left with a bit of a white elephant. Not my problem, way above my pay grade, that I just needed to support them with their closure and their heritage. There was a terrific museum there, life's work of some of the old boys who ran that museum. We have to handle that sensitively, you know, and I understand they are emotionally invested in that. So I can't just wait and say, oh, I just chuck it all in a bin, who cares? Because that's not me either, but you know, we just can't do that. So it's quite an ongoing project. I travelled up to Linton a lot to sort this out. These are the sorts of things we do. So that is the Church Fenton badge, another station that had closed way back, was relocated to Linton. precious things like this have to go into archive, and they go to archive at Northolt, the Air Historical Branch at Northolt. And I say I have the honour, really, I took these personally to Northolt. So I signed them off Linton on Ouse. I thought that was really rather nice as a York lad to be able to do that. That's a City of York Freedom Scroll. I mean, you know, it's sad really, and they're talking about closing the 2 barracks in York as well. There's 2 garrisons in York, which would be the first time that York has not been a garrison town in 2,000 years. You know, and that's quite significant really. Although it's delayed, the closure of one of the barracks has been delayed, so, you know, just perhaps there'll be a reprieve. So, that's why I came up big to see. Here we go. Op Panther. There is a man out there in UK land who digs up crash sites. Digging up a crash site is illegal without a licence. You are not allowed to dig up RAF crash sites or disturb body parts like he has done. So these are artefacts that were confiscated by North Yorkshire Police and put into Has 8 at Leeming under a police investigation because this guy has broken the law by illegally excavating. I won't name him, but you can read about him, he's out there. Okay, yeah, Palmer Protection of Military Remains Act. As you can see, there's an awful lot of them. This guy has recently been in jail for other offences. He was in jail for about 5 years. Really unpleasant stuff, I won't tell you what it is. Again, but you can read about it. So we've got a problem now. What are we going to do with all these artefacts? A lot of it's junk, but we do believe that he is sort of a body thief, really, a grave robber, because he had human remains in plastic boxes. Bones, obviously, from the wartime period, which again is illegal and you know, just in bad taste, really, just not what we should be doing. So we've got a problem now. He wants these bits back. Now he's out of jail. And so it's an ongoing situation. I've done a witness statement. The DIO archaeologist, Richard Osgood, who you may see on telly quite often, he's on with Professor Alice, whatever her name is, Digging for Britain. He's always on there. He's our defence archaeologist, super guy. Yeah, it's a challenge. So there's some more bits. Obviously, I guess there's a bit of a Wellington there. They're all in bags. Down, you recognise who that is. That's my boss, head of Air Historical Branch, Seb Cox, civilian. We went up there. It's freezing. This is the week before Christmas, not last year, but end of 2022. It's absolutely bitter, even though that's indoors. So that's just to give you a flavour of some of the other stuff we do. And this is a real running sore and is causing a problem for our lawyers, for MOD police, for North Yorkshire police. It's all just a bit of a mess. And I'm not sure what's going to come of it, really, at the moment. We've produced these witness statements for MOD police. They wanted to know, incredibly, are these aircraft parts? And how am I and the others qualified to know their aircraft parts? So we've had to do witness statements. I've had to list all my credentials, and that these are clearly aircraft parts, and here's why, because they show kinetic damage from impact, fire damage, the metal, the quality, everything and the material. They are clearly aircraft components, mate. There you go, Mr. Chief Inspector. But you know, they've got to do it properly, haven't they? So. Yeah, a challenge. It's caused a few sleepless nights. Certainly for my boss, it's caused a few sleepless nights. Let's have a look at some other stuff we do. Artwork. I knew nothing about paintings or artwork before this job. I know a lot about it now. Massive art store at Hendon, great place to go. But they don't like loaning stuff out in the RAF Museum. They're good at that. So. And I don't blame them really, because it can get damaged. And I'll show you some damage in a moment. Silverware, the Air Force has an enormous supply of silverware. Every station has silverware, from trophies and cups, and something that was, Flying Officer Snodgrass presented in 1947 at RAF Little Snoring for the best snooker player. You know, and so we have to be a bit sensitive. I mean, partly we just love to melt all that down, the rubbish, and there is a lot of rubbish. But we have to be sensitive about that. You know, something like that can't pitch up at a car boot sale, because, you know, Flying Officer Snodgrass's great aunt, great niece might see it and go, why's that at a car boot sale? So we have to be sensitive. We do have some terrific silverware as well. We like to put silverware out on show. There's no point in keeping it in storage. We do have a silver store. It's near here. It's at Donington in Telford. The most secure building I've ever been in. 5 layers of security to get into that building. Not because of my silverware, but because of the other stuff they keep in there. Metal detectors on the way in, metal detectors on the way out. It's also where they keep the part of the cannon that they strike the Victoria crosses from. You're not allowed any pictures. You have to put your phone, your camera in a locker before you go in, so I can't share any pictures of that. That's quite something, you know, the actual lump of metal from which all the VCs are struck. They have a little museum to that, but you have to, well, wish you luck, you won't get in, so, you know, I only get in because my silver's there, but we have to book 3 weeks in advance and do a contract amendment and all sorts. Medals, just talked about the VC, I'll show you a medal in a mo. Stories, yeah. Heritage is about stories as well, it's not just about artefacts. You know, it's nice if we put an aircraft somewhere, it's nice to tell a story of that aircraft, what it's done, who's flown it, where it's been, how many hours it's got, where it was built, all of that good stuff. And we do that as well. Inquiries on anything heritage related. We get some wacky inquiries, we get phone calls, I don't know where people get my number, but they do, and they call me about stuff. Here we go, here's a VC, Kenneth Campbell. So, I could implicate the RAF Museum slightly in this. Just let's say we relieved the RAF Museum of it because they didn't want it anymore. And I took this personally up to Cranwell, where it's now on show in the rotunda at Cranwell. I don't know whether any of you know that, which is the entrance way to College Hall, the big officer training college. Terrific story, Kenneth Campbell, young guy, age 23, pressed home this attack, all killed on board his aircraft. The Germans were so impressed with his heroism, they gave him a full military funeral, and that's quite unusual. He took off from Cornwall, St Evell in Cornwall, and that's his VC, which lived on 22 Squadron for a long time, but 22 Squadron closed down. They gave it to the RAF Museum, who didn't want it, so we said, well, we'll make a display out of that, we'll do something with that, and that is a genuine VC there. I took that picture. So I drove it all the way up to Cromwell, didn't stop, wrapped in about 5 or 6 boxes, keep going, so yeah. That's one of the desks at work, there's just some silver. Yeah, we've got loads of it, we do have loads of silver. We get requests from the Rugby Association and the Hockey Association for trophies, so we try and divvy some out to them if we can, as long as you don't change, as long as you don't erase the previous inscription. You can put a new inscription on, that's allowed, but you're not allowed to erase the previous inscription because that's the provenance of the piece of silver. So that's just a random picture. So there's painting with some damage, that's in the mess at Odium. If you can't see, there's a... That's not on the painting, by the way, that line. I put that line on the slide. So Odeon rang up and said that we've got some damage to one of our paintings, you know, what do we do? So I teed up the art lady, the art historian, the art curator at Hendon, Julia, who'd never been on an RAF base, believe it or not. So I said, let's go and we'll have a look at it. So we went to Odium and we said, yeah, that's damaged. So we took that away, we arranged for that to be taken away and go to an art restoration company and repair that. Odium obviously paid for that. That's not a free service. But yeah, so that was done in conjunction with Hendon, with the team at Hendon. So I just thought I'd show you one or two other things. These are some highlights of 2023, which I might have to update soon, but what's that? RAF Landrog. I'll have a drink of water while you're thinking.
Yeah, Carnarvon.
Carnarvon, yes, Carnarvon. This is a good audience. Well done. So this is Carnarvon Aviation Museum, which is a lovely, lovely little place. And Carnarvon itself is stunning. I've never been before, but what a delightful place to go. That's the old Gate Guardian at Lossiemouth. Last year we replaced that Gate Guardian for them. So that's an old scruffy GR4 Tornado, which we've put a brand new Tornado there now, as brand new as they get, obviously. And you see it's all a bit, the weather's pretty harsh up at Lossiemouth, frankly, so by the sea there. Some of you may sort of know where that is. It's not far from here. That's in Shawbury, storage in Shawbury. That's a Typhoon Tranche 1 Typhoon, which are essentially sort of Windows 98 Typhoons. They're not really much use to anybody, despite what politicians and Mark Francois says. They aren't any use to anybody. They can't be generated to fly in a modern warfare environment, which doesn't come out really in the press or the Daily Mail, sadly. But what can be used is loads of spare parts from them. So that's what they do. They rip spare parts out of them to put into the Tranche 2 and Tranche 3 Typhoons, which are very capable. That's Bombay Door from a Nimrod. So that was the last crew from a Nimrod with all their names on it. That went to the Yorkshire Air Museum after Nimrod retired, and was there for best part of 10 years. But when the Nimrod Force stood up, they said, "Could we have that back, please?" So they don't go to the museum directly, they come to me and I go to the museum, and we brokered that deal, and Yorkshire were quite happy to give that back. So that's now in the T-bar at either 120 or 201 Squadron at Lossiemouth. So a lot of these are just taken from a trip I had to Lossiemouth. So I spent a week there in March last year. Look at the weather. Those are P8 Poseidons. They said to me when I was up there, "Do you want to come flying with us?" I went, "Yes, please." So I went for 6 hours low level in one of those over the sea, chasing submarines and boats. No cameras, got to take smartwatch off, go through an airlock even for the briefing. Top secret stuff. Very, very capable aircraft, and that picture is taken from a long way away, which is right, because you're not allowed cameras anywhere near. And that is the wonderful hawk that we put into the museum at Carnarvon, the Welsh-themed hawk, which is a really smart exhibit. So those are all sort of highlights from last year. Another personal highlight for me, I opened a hospital wing. Can you believe? So I've never done that before. The Wellington suite at Brackley Medical Centre, quite a big medical centre, it's like a small hospital really. So I'd been on the road all week, and it'd been, I was really tired, and they'd asked if I could go, but I hadn't confirmed with them whether I would to unveil this. And I said I've been away all week, I was really tired, I got back late on the Friday night, and this is a Saturday morning. I got back late and I thought, it's probably going to be too much to go to Brackley, I'm shattered. And then I looked up this crash that night, Friday. I sat in bed and I looked on Wikipedia about the crash in this aeroplane, where they're all but one were killed, and all the crew were 21 or younger. And I sat there and I thought, and I'm saying I can't be bothered because I'm a bit tired. And that really pricked my conscience, and I just thought, I'm not comfortable living with that. So I went and did it, and I think it was important that I read that, and I think it's easy to forget sometimes how the heroes that went before us, during the war and the sacrifices they made. So, yeah, that is what I did, and I'm glad I did, and it was a lovely day, and they were very grateful for that. And this was a crash, peacetime crash, just took off nearby from RAF to Western, but didn't really get full. I mean, we used to crash aircraft all the time, didn't we? Hundreds of them. It never got shot down, it just took off, never gained flying speed, and just crashed into the ground, right near here at Brackley. So that's us rebuilding that splendid hawk at Carnarvon. That's how they arrive. That's a JARTS team doing that. Good lads, they got a couple of nights, we all did, we got some time in Carnarvon for that. That's Steve Brown from here, one of the chief instructors here, who's good with Hawks. And the highlight from last year, Spade Adam. I'm going to show you some pictures of Spade Adam. What an interesting place Spade Adam is. Massive military training area near Carlisle, huge, hundreds and hundreds of acres. They didn't have a gate guardian, they asked if they could have a gate guardian, to which I said, yes, let's try and get you one. Big project, so they got a Jaguar from here, XZ374, that's it being installed. I was able to go up there. I sort of pick and choose which jobs I go on if I like. You know, I sometimes manage them remotely, send the engineers out and the team, with the team leader Steve there. But this one I wanted to go to see it. Very impressive, nice weather, fortunately. This is, well, you can see July, so this is summer again. So, Spade Adam, it's worth to an aviation audience showing a bit of Spade Adam. So, it's not fenced off. It is private and you will get thrown off, but it's not fenced. So you can actually walk around it, as people do, and you'll see on social media these urban explorers and people like that take pictures. So this is a flight line meant to simulate a Russian flight line. Those aren't Russian aircraft, they are Mysters, they are French, but they're meant to look like Russian jets. That is a genuine Sukhoi 27, which is there. So they don't bomb them anymore, they laser them, but it's still used as an active bombing range. But like I said, you can't set fire to aircraft anymore, you can't bomb them either, because that effectively sets fire to them. So they laser them, they've got this Gucci kit that tells them whether they've hit it or whether they've destroyed it. Yeah, you know, I'd never been to Spade Adam, absolutely fascinating place. So here's some pictures of the ranges. That's the old gate guardian at Lossiemouth, which I showed you earlier. That's now gone there. We've taken the seats out of that, that's gone to Boscombe Down because they didn't have any seats in their Tornado, so we ripped the seats out. That's that flight line from afar. It's quite impressive. That is a HIP helicopter, or was it a Hind? I can't remember. That was looted during the Iraq First Gulf War, because you're allowed to loot other people's military stuff. Don't know whether you know that, but you are. It's one of the rules of war. So, and that's there now. So yeah, that was looted by the Allies. That was here. That's now gone to Boscombe Down. So obviously a connection with Boscombe Down because it's a trials aircraft. It's a Raspberry Ripple. Needed to find a home. I actually recovered that from Bruntingthorpe. Interesting story. It was at Bruntingthorpe closing down. There was no transfer of ownership paperwork. We couldn't work out who owned it, so we went and took it back. We repossessed it effectively. So I took a team up there. I went in case some lawyers turned up and went, you can't take that, but they never did. So we simply went up and repossessed it. We brought it back here, and it's now gone to a museum, to a good home, which I like that it's gone to a good home. So here's some stuff from Athen. You recognise that, no doubt, folks. The Queen's over there again. So that's meant to go into the museum. That flew in to St Athan. That's meant to go to the museum at St Athan, South Wales Air Museum. So they moved it over to a remote parking bay here, and GJD, who run the museum, had plans to move it, and then overnight the local council put street lamps up all down the route they were going to take it. So they can't move it now. So they've got a problem. So it hasn't gone anywhere yet. So, yeah, I know you couldn't write it, could you? Obviously no engines on it, but it's still really good inside. You know, I think you could charge a £5 for people to go and sit in the Queen's seat. It could be quite a money spinner, really. Honington. This is in a house. We're going to put this Tornado on the gate at Honington. There's a really scruffy Buccaneer there now, which we're going to move when we get some resources to do it, and we're going to put that Tornado on the gate. Of course, the minute word gets out that we're going to move the Buccaneer, all the local Buccaneer militia who have settled in Suffolk, you know, are onto us. What do you mean you're moving the Buccaneer? Oh, God. So we do have to manage that situation. It's quite sensitive. I understand it's their old platform. I know a number of ex-Buccaneer aircrew, and they all say to me, they're not bothered about it. They said Lossiemouth's the home of Buccaneers anyway, so I don't know why people are getting up in arms about it. So the fact is, if a Gate Guardian looks scruffy and is beyond repair, then it's just not doing its job. We won't scrap that Buccaneer, it will go to a museum, hopefully. But they're expensive to move. Buccaneers, they're absolutely solid. They are the traditional brick, you know what, where you go to the toilet. They are just utterly solid and a total pain to move. Really, really difficult. Very famous cockpit section at real smarty points if anyone knows what aircraft this cockpit's from. I mean, you know what type of aircraft it's from, obviously, but...
Is the one that had the engine stop out in the forest?
It is, yes, in the news recently, because Eric Moody, the pilot, just died, didn't he? Yeah, so that is the cockpit section from the one that had the 4-engine flame out over Java. Yeah, which Gary Spores, this is in a hangar at St Athan. This is just, I don't know what Gary's going to do with it, but that's the cockpit section, and it was recently in the news, obviously, very famous. He saved all the lives on board, didn't he? He got down to about 4,000 feet, managed to relight his engines. So, yeah, really, that was 1982, I think, something like that. There's some other stuff. The A1, Coney Guard Services on the A1. They bought, this was the old Gate Guardian at Scampton. They bought it at auction, 90,000. 90,000. He thinks he got a good value. I don't tell him what I value them at, but it's a lot less than 90,000. So, but they're making a good job of it. They're going to make it a feature. They're going to landscape the gardens. It's there. It's worth going to look at, guys. If you're ever going up the A1, it's just north of Leaming in Yorkshire. So, yeah, XX306 hasn't flown for years because it was on the gate at Scampton. And here, this is just across the road. This is another Jaguar on its way to Yorkshire Air Museum being prepped. Yeah, so. Hearing storage at Shawbury. Oh, yes. So, XX238. A few months ago, I staged a beauty contest at Shawbury. There's dozens of Hawks in storage at Shawbury. I've got lots of museums who would like them, so I go up basically with a clipboard. I assemble a few experts. I've done the same with Darren for other aircraft. And I run a beauty contest, and I shortlist aircraft and museums. This is XX238 covered in shit. Now you can see no canopy, looking really scruffy. I offered them another one which had navy colours on the side. This is for South Yorkshire Air Museum, and they went, we don't want the navy one, we want this one. And I take you back to my remark that one person's scruffy aeroplane is another person's restoration project. They don't care. We'll clean it up. We'll do stuff with it. It was interesting. They lobbied me really hard. They said they want a Hawk, and I went up to South Yorkshire to see them, and their local MP was there to meet me, which is quite uncomfortable because as a Crown servant, I'm not supposed to meet MPs. However, we got round it. I knew about it about a day in advance, and I got our parliamentary team in Whitehall to clear me to go and see her. I said, you know, it'd be really much easier, guys, if she wasn't there. Dame Rosie Winterton, Deputy Speaker, Labour for South Yorkshire. What a lovely lady, very forceful, massive supporter of South Yorkshire Air Museum and investment in industry in that part of the world, which has traditionally been a bit neglected. But it's a great museum, South Yorkshire, and that's what they've done with it. Look at that. Fabulous, isn't it? As you can see, no head boxes. I can't get head boxes for ejection seats because the Red Arrows have taken them all. And it's gone inside now, so you know, before any of you say, oh, I've got to go inside, it has gone inside. This is at the rebuild. You see, it's not fully rebuilt yet, the tailplane's not on. But you know, they made a really, really good job of that. Here's another project. This is here now. This is just across the way. I was looking at this today. ZH590 development aircraft Typhoon was at Duxford. Duxford promised to give it to Newark, and we went, ooh, we're not sure about that because that's like another end user. Should we do some digging? And it was never even given to Duxford properly. I don't understand Duxford's policy, and I don't always understand the RAF Museum's policy. They have a thing called collections policy, state museums, and if it doesn't fit their collections policy, they don't want it. So they don't want this because it's a trials aircraft. They want a production Typhoon. Well, the bad news for Duxford is they're not going to get a production Typhoon because there aren't any. So they were going to give this to Newark, and we said, I'm sorry, Newark, you can't have that either. because there's too much ITAR equipment on it. Trials equipment, orange wiring, some of the astute amongst you will notice that. And it's here now, so it's come here to train our technicians. We can't put power on it or systems on it, they've just got some engines they're going to fit, but you can teach structure, weapon loading, general awareness, composites, so it is a useful training aid. So it's come back in-house and it's going to be used to train our technicians of the future, which is a great thing. And I saw it today and I sort of had a warm glow of satisfaction because I took the first team to go down and move that. That's taken at Duxford, that picture. It's a shame really, I think Duxford have lost out. They had a typhoon, they haven't got one now. So, more for all them. But hey, there we go. Here we go, what's coming up? Nearly at the end here now. So, that's today. That's today, went out the gate. If you'd got here at 1 o'clock this afternoon, you'd have seen that going out the gate. That's gone to Gatwick Cable. What's the connection with Gatwick? Terrific. It's not connected to the airport at all, the museum. They've got a Cold War display. It's a terrific museum. They're well resourced, they're well funded, they're indoors. You can eat the dinner off the floor. They're marvellous. They get good footfall, good STEM engagement. You know, they tick all the boxes. So we have given them a Jaguar and they are absolutely thrilled to bits with it. I was talking to the director on my drive up here. So that's going to Scotland, that's going to Montrose in summer soon. It's got Scottish emblems on there, so that's suited to them. This has been on the bus, off the bus. We're going to do this as a service move, and the availability of JARTs has meant we've just not had the opportunity to do it yet. It's about a year late going to Montrose. This is happening, well, like it says there, second week in May. So, in fact, it hasn't gone yet. It's moving on the 7th of May. Today I got an invite to the unveiling on the 13th of May. So fingers crossed it's all going to work. But that's the Hawk 100 Squadron markings. Going to go to Nelsan, which is close to Leeming, and that's where 100 Squadron were based. So that's a project I've run, and I say, let's hope it goes. They're going to move it themselves from Shawbury. This is where I'm going tomorrow. I'm going to Shawbury tomorrow. And I just need to get eyes on these Tucanos because I want to make sure that we're getting the right thing. This is yours, Darren, this one? ZF244, that's the one that's earmarked for the RAF Museum. That's the one that's earmarked for Yorkshire Air Museum. I managed to secure 3, so the obvious place would be here, the RAF Museum. They're my first port of call. Yorkshire Air Museum, clearly they flew from Linton-on-Ouse, so the skies over York were full of them for 2 or 3 decades. This one we want to go to Ulster, but there's a problem with this one commercially and contractually because it's been sold to someone else. So we need to do some fast brokering, but that's gorgeous. You can see it's Enniskillen. It was paid for during the war by the people of Enniskillen. The Spitfire in these colours was paid for by the people of Enniskillen during World War II. They would love that at Ulster, and I would love to get that for them. I'm going to fight really, really hard to do that. So this is yesterday. That's where I was yesterday. Graduation parade at Bolton, which was great. I haven't been to a graduation parade, but I saw through, they want to replace this. So I saw through their ploy. That's why they invited me. But I was up there at Holton anyway. A couple of weeks ago I did a presentation and I went and had a look at this tornado anyway. It is scruffy. I think we need to get them a Typhoon. If I can get them a Typhoon, I will. We're going to work really hard on that. But we're in a bit of a fight because there's none being released, and there are other people that want them as well within the RAF, and I have to see. But yeah, this was terrific. We had a fly past. A400 came over really low and slow. Amazing. They got one serviceable, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. That was yesterday, and there it is, closer up. You see. That's the tornado that's there, an old, what squadron's that?
31.
31, the Gold Stars, yeah. So there we go, 1.5 hours down, how about that? That's it, thank you very much. Must be some questions, yes?
And then retire the trench one Typhoons, I think next year, will we be able to get those? Or
So the Tranche 1 Typhoons are already retired. So the only place a retractional Typhoon's flying is in the Falklands. So there's 4 of them down there because they can't really replace those at the moment.
There's another batch that is still flying, is it?
No, so they're all on the ground. Either some are in storage at Shawbury, or they're on the ground at Lossiemouth or Coningsby. They're Windows 98. That's the best way I can explain it. You know, in a modern world, you know, they're just not capable. I'm not a Typhoon expert, but I do sit on the disposals panel when they talk about all this. They are robbing them blind to keep the Tranche 2s and Tranche 3s flying. So that affects me, because if I want to put one in a museum or on a gate or anywhere for that matter, there at Holton, it's got to look like a Typhoon, hasn't it? I can't have gaping holes all over it, missing, and because it's not going to do the job, is it? So it's in a delicate stage of negotiation, is probably the best I can say. Yes, that one there.
What has happened to the TriStar fleet?
The TriStar fleet was all at Bruntingthorpe, all 6 of them. Bruntingthorpe has closed and they've all been chopped up. Yeah, they weren't mine anymore. They were bought privately by a guy who wanted to develop a tanker capability, and he didn't get the contract, and then he never paid the rent at Bruntingthorpe. And as you know, Bruntingthorpe has sort of ceased operating as where they used to taxi them up and down and stuff. I only know this because I went to repossess that Jaguar there, so I met Richard Walton, the guy who owns it, and he taught me through all of this. It's quite sad, really, seeing those TriStars. I've flown on all of them, really. But you can't keep everything, and once they've flown in, there was talk of flying them out. There were 3 or 4 747s there as well. There was talk of flying them out. I tell you, I looked at them and thought, God, don't buy a farmhouse at the end of the runway. Yeah. No, so that's what's happened. Sorry, yeah, they've been chopped up.
Thank you.
One over there was the best there.
Have you rehanged the tornado wing after you've cut out the pin?
Easy. So we take the wing off,
Yeah.
and the pin has already dropped out by that stage. It's a massive, think about a bucket, a domestic bucket, that's what it looks like. So we grind down the outside of that pin, so that it will just go in without being, without being nitrogen cooled. And then you put these things called the, they come to me, but there's some panels that you panel round, and it basically just, these panels just keep that pin in. There's no load on it anymore, is there? So the weight keeps it in as well, the weight of the wing. So. Yes?
Just ask that Victoria Cross,
Yes.
RAF Museum didn't want.
Yeah.
Seems an odd.
Be careful what I say. The RAF Museum has a collections policy. They have far more kit than they know what to do with. I don't think that's an unfair statement. They've got so much stuff. They've got Victoria Crosses on display. They didn't want that one. So they were going to return it to the family. The family didn't want that to happen. They said, surely it can be found a home. And myself and Eric and my boss, we found a home for it up at Cranwell, and it's in a case mounted beautifully with the citation and everything. So the RAF Museum has an awful lot of stuff, huge amounts of stuff, and they are trying to downsize. I think we all know that. They're trying to downsize their stock holdings, not their estate. They're trying to downsize their stock holdings. So yeah, they don't want everything. And you know, VCs sell, don't they, at auction for hundreds of thousands, but the family didn't want that either. They wanted it to go on show. So, you know, they came to us and we found somewhere to put it on show. So I'm really pleased, and it looks gorgeous up there now. Does that answer your?
Yeah, it just seemed an odd thing for the.
Yep, it does. I agree. But I've got to be politically correct, Darren, haven't I? Yeah. But you've got too much stuff, haven't you? You know, stock holding wise, you're trying to downsize, but state wise, you're expanding, stock holding wise, you're downsizing. So, yes.
With Scampton's closure and its future now decided, I think, Do you know anything that's about the artefacts that are going to be there, particularly a certain memorial to a dog?
The dog.
Yeah.
We like to refer to it. The dog has occupied many man-hours in our department. Is there a dog there? We don't know, do we? So, first of all, the renaming of the dog on the headstone was a bit of a furore, but I was a supporter of renaming it because I thought that, you know, if we show school children around audiences, you know, from mixed backgrounds, it's probably not a good idea to have that there. Do we keep it as a memorial? I don't know. It hasn't been decided yet what we're going to do with that. The plan was to develop Scampton with a sort of £300 million development plan, of which heritage formed quite a big part. So there was going to be a heritage cell as part of this new industrial park and runway and science park and all the rest of it. But because of the plans to put the asylum seekers there, and we don't get involved in this, I'm just looking at the heritage, that's on hold at the moment with West Lindsey Council and the Home Office and so on. So the answer is, I don't know what we're going to do about that dog, but the rumour has it there is no dog under there. But then, you know, it's really, you know, the grave to the dog looks a bit like my sort of big fat gypsy grave. You know, it's really not very tasteful. It's just, but it comes with the package of Guy Gibson's office being right next to what they call the curtilage in listed building parlance. So it's a bit of a mess, and it's very emotional, the closure of Scampton, as you can imagine. You know, it was where the Dams raid was launched from, we all know that. I think that sometimes people pay more attention to the dog than they do to the, you know, all the men, the 155 men or whatever it was that were killed on that night, you know. Perhaps that's where we should focus our attention more. You know, the memory of the brave crews rather than a dog. Might be controversial, I don't know, but for now, the grave stays there. We have relocated a lot of the artefacts from Scampton. A lot of them were owned by the RAF Museum and have been taken back by the RAF Museum into ownership. You know, it's a shame Scampton can stay open, isn't it? You know, when I think of closing Linton on Ouse, that was really just like a piece of cake, frankly, compared to Scampton. So, yeah, pity. Yes.
Yeah, you know, obviously we're talking about that, but what was your other tricky one then that caused you the most sleepless nights to achieve? Not by conversion, just one you go, that was really, really difficult to do.
What did I say was really difficult?
Sorry, you on about the dog and that was like quite tricky. But what was the one that you look back when you did was the most difficult one and the one you got the most satisfaction from?
Well, the closure of Linton was really successful, so we relocated all the memorial stones into the local area. So we put the 2 memorial stones, we put one on the village green at Newton on Ouse and one outside the parish council office in Linton on Ouse. A lot of the artwork went to Northallerton council offices, they were very keen to take those. I relocated the 2 gate guardians, so the Jet Provost went to Elvington and the Tucano went to Syerston as a training aid at Syerston. The artwork, there was some fabulous artwork in the mess there. Most of that went to Kaz's house, Chief of the Air Staff's house. They love to collect artwork, the chiefs, you know, because they use their residences to entertain diplomats and so on. So we did really, there was a strong team at Linton running the closure programme there as well, so working with them was an absolute pleasure. They got it. So that was really satisfying. The one that's going to be very difficult is Holton, but that's just rolled to the right again, so that the closure of Holton is even more delayed. When I first came to this job, I used to brief that Holton would close in 2023. It just hasn't, because the function that Holton performs cannot be performed anywhere else. They haven't even put a spade in the ground at Cranwell yet, so which is where they're going to transfer recruit training to. So who knows? So that will be a challenge, not least because there's a really nice museum. Well, there is a museum. I don't discuss whether it's nice or not, but there's a museum called the Trenchard Museum at Holton, run by volunteers, quite elderly, emotionally invested in it. That's going to be difficult, relocating some of that equipment. What do we do? So the museum at Linton, Elvington, Yorkshire Air Museum, took all of that and they're going to make a Linton room. Happy with that? That's great, isn't it? Some of it was a bit rubbish. You know, a lot of this stuff means a lot, but not to everyone. It just means a lot to certain individuals. So we have to sort of be arbiters of good taste, really, with some of this kit. Challenges, it was a challenge putting deciding where Bravo November was going to go. That was a real challenge. It's a challenge fighting off museums who are desperate for aircraft. There's a museum in Norwich, City of Norwich Aviation Museum, CNAM. They'd love a Tornado, of course they would. You know, where were Tornadoes based? Marham, just down the road, they've got no indoor storage. We looked round. We looked round City of Norwich Aviation Museum. They've got some decent stuff, but they've got nowhere indoors at all. And so, you know, we had to write a sort of polite letter to them and go, sorry, but, you know, as things stand, you can't have a Tornado. They may get one sometime because we have got one or two more have come up from Wellington that we saw there. So, you know, possibly challenges dealing with MPs who want to know how many Tornadoes we've got because they drive past one on the gate and say, why don't we send that to Ukraine? They do. You know, that's what they're thinking. You know, so I tell them how many we've got, but then I tell them that they are structurally modified, they are not airworthy, we've cut through cables, we've ground down the wing pins. So, you know, it's a nice thought. But, you know, we've sent them loads of F-16s, haven't we? We haven't, but the Allied nations have sent them F-16s. F-16s, easy to fly, easy to maintain. That's why they exported so well. That's why it's the best exported fighter in the world, because they're so simple. So, that was a challenge. You know, challenge when the first ACAS said, oh, put all the Tornadoes in the skip. That was a challenge for us. Yeah, you know, challenges. What happened?
Killed it.
Yeah, so does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It's just, like you say, it's obviously nothing ever really goes easy, does it?
No, the hardest challenge in this job are the people issues, as I think they are anyway. You know, we can overcome physical. I can move an aircraft through the narrow lanes of Norfolk if I try hard enough, but it's really difficult with people who are emotionally invested in the old units they served on, the old aircraft they served on, not believing that we care, and we do care, we really care, we take it very seriously, but we have to make sensible decisions and decisions that the Treasury will support. You know, not just emotionally charged decisions. Yes, sorry, there was a hand there.
Is there an airframe or an artefact, a thing, anywhere where you said, I wish we could get that? Top of your wishes.
Well, I wish some more Hercs had gone to museums, because I operated them for the best part of a decade. The Beverley at Fort Paul, that's an interesting one, which has been saved, we believe, because that's the only example, and that's going to go up to Solway Aviation Museum. I was with the team from Solway on the weekend. They've raised 60,000 to do that. Not really, because we've managed to really save anything. There are not many F3s. Spitfires and Hurricanes. So all the Spitfires and Hurricanes you see on a gate, static anyway, they're all models because they are too precious. You couldn't put them on a gate, you know, they are national treasures. I don't have a lot to do with BBMF at Coningsby because they fly their aircraft, so they're an independent unit, and none of my aircraft fly. Is there anything I'd love? Well, yeah, I'd love to see. I mean, we didn't save any C-130Js at all. They've all allegedly gone for a government-to-government sale, but are currently languishing at Marshall's at Cambridge. They're waiting for somebody to pay for them or something. But yeah, VC, you know, it's a shame we've chopped up some, you know, the 2 VC-10s at Bruntingthorpe got chopped up as well. So, you know, and it's a shame. I like it. The best way of doing things is when an aircraft flies in, I always think, because there's a bit of history there. You know, so the Lightning at Elbington, for instance, you know, it flew in, and there's a board there saying that he did this massive air show before he landed for the last time. And I thought, you know, that's a story, isn't it? When they turn up on the back of a lorry, it's all right, but it's not the same as flying in. I was at Duxford years ago, 1982, when the Vulcan flew in, and he went round and round and round, you know, just giving it rocks. It doesn't matter about fatiguing it, does it? And then he landed and I think blew all the tyres because the runway's short and everything. But that's nice, and I see that Vulcan there and go, yeah, I was here when you landed, you know. The Hurt landed here, didn't it?
Yes, it did, yeah.
Yeah, but the VC-10 didn't, is that right? Yeah, the Nimrod didn't, did it?
That's interesting that when, in fact, the VC-10, the British Airways delivered here, actually landed it.
Did it? Yeah.
Yeah, and the 707.
Yeah, there was it 707, 720? I remember that, British Air Tours
Yes,
on the
they
side. Yeah.
flew in. And yet when the VC-10 was coming, they said, no,
I know.
in charge of the squadron wouldn't sign the document.
That's the, well, yeah, not in charge of the squadron, the chief of the air staff, who
Right.
was the CEO.
And the same with the Nimrod.
Yeah, and the Nimrod wouldn't either. So we live in a climate now where risk is managed through a different lens.
Sad thing about that, we actually had Victors and Vulcans fly in here
Yeah,
and land in 2/3 of the runway.
yeah, I know. It probably could have been done, but
Runway too short in peacetime.
yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Because you declared war on Wales.
I get longer in.
I mean, just harking on what Darren said, though, one of the interesting things that the OCBBMF, who I know, said when we were up there visiting, he said that they often have to cancel. They you know, they're booked to do fly pasts at garden parties and all of this stuff. The weather's a bit rubbish, so they don't do it. You know, they get all these letters coming through saying, "Oh, it's a good job we didn't think like that during the Battle of Britain," you know, during the war. But it's like, you know, seriously, are we going to fly them to wartime limits? You know, just for a garden party? You know, people just don't really think about what they're saying. You know.
We've had a Globemaster in here, by the way. Landed in about a third the length of the runway.
Yeah, well, then.
And reversed back up.
Yeah, but they're short field performance, aren't they? Same as a Herc.
Yeah.
Same as a Herc. So that could get in, I'm sure, you know.
What was the policy regarding the Sentinel? Because we would have
Good question.
really loved to have a Sentinel with the Nimrod.
Yes, you would. So, here we go. I'm going to be non-PC now, Darren. So I was offered a Sentinel, and I offered it to the RAF Museum, they didn't want it. There you go. That's the answer to that. I was offered one by the fleet manager, there were 5. I was Django, I was an engineer on Sentinels, that was my squadron tour. So they sold 4 of them, and Dave Herschel, who we spoke about today, he rang me up, he said, "Rick, I've got a Sentinel, if you want a Sentinel, you can have one." And I offered one to the previous head of collections at the RAF Museum, who I'm sure he wasn't acting in isolation, said he didn't want one. So, and then latterly, they did say they wanted one, but it's too late by then. Masses of secret kit on it, of course, so we'd have had to have stripped all that out. But we could have made it look Sentinel-esque, for sure. Yeah, lovely. Same size as a Nimrod as well. People don't realise that. Same wingspan as a Nimrod. They're a private jet. People think they're much smaller, but they're the same size as a Nimrod. So yeah, pity. I'd love to have. I had one. The RAF Museum didn't want one, and I couldn't give one to a private museum. So yes.
As regards training instructional aircraft here at Cosford, when we had a hangar full of Jaguars,
Yes.
it really, when you walked into the hangar, it really looked the part
Did.
for the young lads
Yeah.
as a first experience of working on aircraft.
Yeah.
Now, is that idea still?
Well, you've
You're
still
getting rid of the Jaguars now.
No,
What's
there were
the-
still Jaguars here for training. You just had loads of them. There were 61 here or
That's
something.
right.
You didn't need 61. So, and I didn't make the policy to get rid of them, by the way. That's taken by someone else. But when the decision's been taken to get rid of them, then
Yeah.
I'll try my best to find some good homes
Yeah.
for them.
What's going to replace those aircraft that are going?
Well, nothing at the moment because we're just getting rid of surplus ones.
Yes, right.
Maybe some Hawks, maybe some Typhoons, I don't know.
Yeah.
What's left of the Typhoon. The trouble is, there's not going to be much left of those Tranche 1 Typhoons by the time they've got them all.
Thank you.
So, you know what, we were talking about this today. I don't think that Jaguar is a problem. You know, if
No, no.
young trainees want to take components out, remove panels and file down widgets,
Ideal.
it doesn't really matter what they're doing it on, does it? You know?
Just to give the idea,
Yeah,
the concept of working on aircraft in a hangar
yes.
on a
exactly.
shift.
Undercarriage up, undercarriage
Yeah,
down,
that's
you know,
it.
engine out, engine in, you know, you can do that on a Jaguar. I know it's not the most fun thing, but the trouble with all these modern jets is that they're all software run, aren't they?
Yeah.
You can't do anything to them unless the entire software suite is up and running. And if you haven't got the entire software suite up and running, well, it just says no. The computer says no.
It's a stepping stone.
Yeah. So, and it's the same in the civil airline world as well. Years ago, if you wanted to do a mod to an aircraft, you put a new instrument in or something, you'd find a space to put it. You'd take some wires to a circuit block somewhere. And that's your mod done. You can't do that now because they all run on data buses. And you can't do anything without the manufacturer okaying it. And they'll charge you 10 million just to open up the software. So it is a real problem to modify, to do anything to modern civil or military jets. And the Americans control all the codes for everything, frankly, don't they? So, and they can charge what they like. So, yeah, that's nothing to do with heritage. That's just my general knowledge of aeroplanes.
A lot of the drags you've got rid of the early ones anyway, because they're still in the
Yeah,
training market.
they're GR1s, yeah.
Yeah, so the GR3 is a lot more modern.
It is,
Anyway,
yeah.
it's a lot more relevant to teacher training, really, isn't it?
You know, I mean, I don't make those strategic decisions at all. What they use those training aids is nothing to do with me at all. But when they decide to get rid of Jaguars, then I can find homes for them, because we can't sell them at the moment because of asbestos regulations. There's a complete embargo on selling Jaguars. So more have become available because museums have got an exemption to asbestos regs because they're all treated. So, yeah, I don't know what, I mean, you know, the F-35 went in the sea, didn't it? That's in a hangar at Marham at the moment. I don't know what they're going to do with that. Nobody knows what they're going to do with that. So that when they recover that aviation. Well, thank you for being such a good audience. There's some more questions though. Is that right, Darren? Can we take one more?
One more.
Fascinating.
I'm the official party pooper. Last question, please. Yes, sir.
The tornado, you have to give parts back because you were giving them to the airlines, weren't they?
Yeah. So it was a bit political, tornado. So the RAF tried to UDI it and sell components to the Saudis and the Italians and the Germans. And BAE Systems said, can't do that because we're the spares, we've got a spares contract. So all the components have had to go back through BAE Systems to then be onwardly sold. So yes, loads of components have gone to those other nations, but not from us via the manufacturer and back. And yeah, it's been a bit vexed because they still operate them and they still operate them in combat roles, so we can't leak, you know, tactics and frequencies and all of that stuff, can we? Because they're going to get a bit cross about that.
With the new gate guards, do the RAF try and look after them? Like, the new
Yeah,
ones?
we strip them out. We take the classified kit off them before they go on the gate, even though they're remaining on camp, because one day they'll be disposed of and there'll be nobody left who knows how to do it. So we do strip the kit out before they go on the gate, and we put 300 kilograms of weight in the nose. You know, if you remember, we do that.
Do they have a plan to look after them?
Yes, yeah, they have to have a plan, and if they don't look after them, then we'll sort that out. They have to demonstrate that they can look after it. They're owned by Station. I don't own the gate guards. The Station Commander owns the gate guardian at every unit. I regulate them. We regulate them. My team, we regulate them. So if we see them scruffy, not in good condition, then we hold them responsible for that. There was another question. Let's have one more. The grey gentleman at the back there.
No, it's just for these changes.
Yeah. Oh, was it? Okay, Roger, that's okay. Thank you.
Excuse me. This is a privilege that I haven't enjoyed for probably several years. giving the vote of thanks, especially on an evening like this, which has been such a roaring success, is a real delight, and a huge thank you to Rick for coming down and talking about what is obviously a personal passion, and something that I also consider extremely important. We started with a definition of heritage. I don't really care whether you count Stonehenge or York Minster Cathedral or a Spitfire from Stoke, whatever. It's all what defines who we are as a country and who we are as a group of enthusiasts. And long may it continue that people like Rick and his team and Darren and his team maintain those artefacts so that we can get kids involved and generally excited. We're all fairly frequent visitors to aerospace museums, I know that for fact. We had a trip, went down to South Wales Aircraft Museum only 2 weeks ago, down at St Athan, had a wonderful time. And I'm sure we've all got a similar kind of experience. I remember walking around Yeovilton Museum long time ago and listened to a youngster about yay big asking the question, "Grandpa, how did you get into that?" And it's all very relevant. So our heritage is hugely worth preserving, and long may you continue doing so, and thank you so much indeed for coming along and giving us the presentation.
My laptop, I'm going to get my laptop to load, so you're going to have to just go home.